Thanks for having me.
Not at all. This is your first time in the UK?
Yeah, I've only been here actually 3 days. The day of my screening was the first day I was here.
Oh, wow.
It's my first time here. Absolutely love it. I've got to come back just to spend some time here.
Good man. Come during summer because you won't like the rest of the year.
You say that, but I live in a city with very extreme weather. That's where it's incredibly hot. So I like variant weather. So I'd come and go, it's raining every day. This is magical. It's really like here. And everyone else is like, oh, it's miserable. It's like, don't tell me about miserable. Miserable is 100 degrees every day, where it's 90 degrees at night. That is miserable. So yeah, I'll take a little rain every now and again.
Sweet. You started off as a online blogger / critic, and you did that for a couple of years. Now you're a screenwriter. Was that always your game plan to make a jump off?
Well, yes, not necessarily in a film. I've always been a fiction writer ever since I was very young, and I always wanted to write fiction. And I just kind of happened into film writing, and so I always took film writing to be kind of a training ground, to be my college experience. I considered every movie another day of classes, where my homework assignment was to review it, and it was graded by everyone who read it and left nasty comments on the internet. And so that built me up not only as a stronger writer, but as learning how to take apart stories and put them back together and explain them to the audience in the proper way. Ended up teaching me how to craft those stories. And my professors were filmmakers. They were the chance to go on the set with Roger Avery and watch him direct Rules of Attraction. They had a chance to sit down and have a couple beers with people like Rodriguez and Tarantino and Tim McCandless and just all these amazing guys that I've come into contact with over the years, that I would ask them the questions of how did you do this and what did you do there, and what their concepts were. And they were my professors teaching me, here's how you do this, here's the tricks, here's the little subtle things. And so when it came time, I was ready. Nice.
You just mentioned a couple of well-known directors, and I'm assuming quite experienced learning from them being on set. Can you tell us a little bit about your favorite films, favorite genres? Because I'm assuming you've broad knowledge of subject matter.
I love all films. I love all genres. Hands down, my favorite genre is romantic comedies. I love romantic comedies, especially British romantic comedies are a weakness of mine. And but I love all genres. I love horror quite a bit. My wife even loves horror more than I do. I'll be, hey, let's watch this new romantic. No, let's watch a horror movie. Okay, well, we'll watch a horror movie. I love science fiction and fantasy. Favorite films, my favorite films are very different than what are the best films, and I keep those on separate lists. But my favorite films are always kind of, adventure-y films that have, deep personal sacrificial characters. I love The Seven Samurai, Magnificent Seven, Dirty Dozen, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan, Lord of the Rings. My favorite, guilty pleasure movie is a film called Battle Beyond the Stars, which is a science fiction remake of The Seven Samurai, which just has an amazing group of people behind the camera. Jim Cameron was the art director on that. John Sayles wrote the script. James Horner did the score. Just stuff like that. I love that stuff. And then, of course, Casablanca is my favorite movie ever made. I think it's the quintessential film. There's no film better. It does everything and it crosses genres, and it stays relevant today. You sit down and watch that movie, you still laugh, you still feel for the characters. It's so powerful, and it's a movie that happened by accident in so many ways. The cast of that was not supposed to be that cast. It was supposed to be Ronald Reagan. They hadn't even written the script while they were filming. They're writing pages as it's going on. They don't even have the ending yet. That movie never should have happened, and yet it's the greatest movie ever made.
You mentioned Seven Samurai, and just to make it sort of a bit of a sideways leap, do you think, Eastern cinema has been incredible, underrated and unthanked influence on Western cinema? And just to sort of Sinister, The Ring, there are some, and not a lot.
Not just some. It's the origin of this story. This movie happened because I went and saw The Ring when it came out. I went home and fell asleep. You never go to sleep after a horror movie. But I'd been up all night. I went to a movie with my wife. I come home. I'm like, I'm going to take a nap for an hour and a half. I fall asleep. I have a terrible nightmare, and it's of me going in my attic, finding a box of Super 8 films, and I pull out the projector and I put in the film, and it's the first shot from this movie.
Oh, wow.
And that image and concept haunted me for years, and eventually I was like, this is kind of a good idea. This would make a good movie. And so I started crafting the story around it. So yes, this film, owes its entire genesis to Eastern cinema. I think Eastern cinema is underrated in the mainstream. When you talk to filmmakers, Scott is actually has over time taught college courses on Kurosawa. He's a Kurosawa expert. He's heavily influenced by Japanese cinema. So many directors love Japanese cinema. The influences are definitely there. And when you talk to creatives, we're all influenced by various films. Just the mainstream doesn't talk about it because they think of Eastern cinema as being so weird and bizarre and inaccessible. And at times it is. You can't you can't show your average person a Sushi Typhoon movie. They're going to be like, what the hell is it? Frankenstein girl versus vampire? I don't understand. Why are there naked girls flying around and cutting off body parts? It's insane. And it's like, well, that's one section of Eastern cinema. Like recently I heard they're going to do a samurai remake of Unforgiven, and I'm like, oh, I can't wait for that. That's going to be amazing. So yeah, it's definitely a huge influence.
Which does lean towards its roots, Eastern roots again.
Exactly. That was the thing with the Seven Samurai. The Seven Samurai was Kurosawa saying, "I'd really love to make a Western, but we didn't have that period over here. So I'm going to make a Western, and I'm just going to make a Western Seven Samurai times." And then people said, "That's an amazing movie. That'd make an amazing Western." And so a year later, they ported it over to Western as the Magnificent Seven, and it ported so easily because that's what Kurosawa was making. And so it's art influencing art.
Alright, damn it. Talk forward to you and talk.
Let's go. Let's rock.
Alrighty, can you? Okay, so you make the leap from online blogger. I'm an online blogger, so I'm in no way sort of being detrimental about the term. But so you make the leap. How did you do it?
Purely by accident. As I said, I told you the story of how the idea came to be, and I had it finally formed, and I become friends with Scott Derrickson over the years. He was a fan of my writing on Ain't It Cool, and I was a fan of his movies. And so we became friends, and we ended up in Las Vegas by accident one night. And, you don't accidentally end up in Vegas. I was in Vegas with my wife. He was there with his brother. We found out. We're like, we have to have drinks, so let's go have drinks. And I'm 5 White Russians in. And he's like, hey, let me bounce an idea off you. And he bounces this idea off me to get my professional opinion. And I share my opinion with him. And I'm like, well, since you did that, I've got this idea that's been banging around my head for years. Let me pass it to you. And he's like, all right. Everybody gets one chance. Everybody in my life pitches me at least once. Here's your one chance. Pitch me. And I pitched him Sinister. And he just looked at me and said, I want to make that movie. And he set up a meeting for a week later with Jason Blum, and Jason Blum said he wanted to make that movie. In fact, he said, it's a found footage movie about the guy who finds the found footage. That's an amazing idea. Why hasn't anyone made that movie yet? Everyone's going to be making that movie next year. We need to make it first. It's such a good idea. Everyone else is going to have it. So let's make it now. And so he cleared all the roadblocks, and that was in January of last year, and we were shooting in September. I mean, it just went. So it was a whirlwind experience.
Cool. Can you tell me a little bit about your working methodology? Sort of how do you get a concept onto screen?
Well, essentially, I get an idea, and if it's a really good one, and I think, like in this case, I think it would make a good movie, I ask myself, can this be a good story? A good idea is a good idea, but can it lead to a good story? We've seen many movies that are good ideas but not good stories, and vice versa. So you ask yourself, is this a good story? And when you find the story, you're like, oh, this is what the story is, and that is a good story. You ask yourself, how has that story been told before? And you start going through and figuring out what way it has been told before, and how to tell it differently. What happened to me at one point, I got a brilliant idea for a romantic comedy, and it stemmed from a real life experience. And I'm like, my very first trip, I was a young film writer. I go out, I'm on the set of Rules of Attraction. I meet a beautiful young actress. We really hit it off. Of course, I'm engaged to be married, so I, can't in any way have anything to do with this girl, and she can't have anything to do with me. But I, posited in my head, what would happen if a film critic went out and fell in love with an actress, and she fell in love with him, and they go off, and then he has to write a scathing review of the movie. Will the relationship survive that? I'm like, that's a really great idea for a movie. And then I move on to the next phase, and I go, well, how has it been done before? Yes, it was called Almost Famous, and it was with a rock writer, and yes, no, and so the idea and you set that aside and you go, okay, and once you work through the pure permutations, sometimes that great idea has just been done and it doesn't need to be done again. You move on to the next idea, and that is essentially how you get to the point to where you hone that idea down to where when you sit down and say, I've got this great idea, and you pitch it to them, they go, that's a great idea, I want to see that. And it's just all about working it and massaging it until you find the story that's a really great story, but that people haven't been told before, and that they sit there and say, I want to see that story now.
Okay, I like it. I don't have much time, so I'm trying to compact it in. I'm sorry.
Quicker answers now. Lightning round.
Sinister ends at a place where there is potential to explore the world of the subject matter a little bit more. So I was wondering, what are your next steps? What are your plans? You mentioned romantic comedies. You've had a lot of science fiction genre. Where are you going to be going next?
We have a couple things in the pipeline, other projects that we're working on. Nothing that we can announce yet. But we're going to be playing around with lots of genres. We're going to be, we've got some science fiction stuff, we've got some fantasy stuff. I, of course, have a novel coming out here in the UK from Galance in January called Dreams and Shadows. That's a fantasy novel. Okay. So that's the next big thing for me is when Sinister's done, then I start trying to sell a book, Dreams and Shadows, available in January from Galance. And then, me and Scott we're just cranking away writing.
Okay. What is it like working with Scott? Do you guys collaborate? It's more about working on a film together than...
We'll finish up this question. It's amazing. Working with him is fantastic. We both have very, very similar, incredibly similar movie tastes and tastes in the type of stories we want to tell. And we have an amazing dynamic of working together. But chiefly, he's a day guy. He has 2 kids and a wife, and he gets up and he's 9 to 5 writing, and the kids come home, and then he's dad and a great dad all night. And I'm the guy who wakes up in the afternoon and hangs out with my wife, and then at nighttime I sit down to crank out all night. So he works all day and passes it on to me, and then I write all night and pass it on to him. He wakes up, has his coffee, takes on, and so we're practically working 24 hours a day, and it's amazing. We just have a really great sense of communication, and we love working together.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Mr. Cargill.
Thanks so much.
I just want you to know that I could have stayed here for 3 hours. Sorry, I'm so quiet.